My dad lived in a farming area, and each house or farm was a few miles apart from each other. When my dad was about 14 years old, he was invited to a sleepover at his uncle's house. My dad liked his uncle, so he went for the night. His uncle had a wife and 3 kids, ages 3, 4, and a baby that was like 6 months old. They had a great time, eating, chatting, playing with the kids, and then it was bedtime. My dad goes to sleep and wakes up to this huge noise. Then he hears screaming and something that sounded like a gunshot. He runs to his uncle's room and sees his uncle shooting the wife and kids. My dad freaks out and runs away. He runs across the house and tries to go through one door, but he can't open it because it was jammed for some reason. So his only option was to run back to the other side and use the other door, which would mean he would need to cross his uncle's room again. He had no choice and slowly walks back and couldn't help but peek in the room. He sees his uncle standing there with a gun. And as my dad is staring at him, his uncle turns around and looks at him and says, "You're lucky I let you live," and puts the gun to his head. As my dad freaks out and starts running, he hears one more gunshot. My dad runs out of the house and keeps running down the dirt road all the way back to his own house. Lucky his dad was still up with some friends, drinking and playing cards. My dad basically collapses as he makes it to the front porch and tells everyone what happened. They call the police, and the police go to investigate and find everyone dead. A little while later, my dad finds out his uncle had quite a few mental issues and was supposed to be taking medication for it, which he wasn't. That is the reason he went crazy that night. As you can imagine, my dad was traumatized for a long time after and had nightmares of his uncle for a long time. Number 2. My father was a truck driver who had to be up at 2 a.m. every morning. That meant we had a rule in our house that no matter what, you can't wake daddy up when he goes to bed at 7 p.m. My mother worked at an old folks home until 10 p.m. every night. So for a couple of hours, it was just me and my sister in the house by ourselves. It was our bedtime one night, so me and my sister went to bed. In a couple of minutes, I heard something hitting the side of the house. Then it started hitting my window. It was really weird, so I got my sister to come in my room. We looked out the window and saw a man bouncing one of my toys against the window and catching it. He put his hand to his mouth and motioned for us to be quiet. Then he motioned for us to go outside and play with him. We were frozen in fear. We knew we couldn't wake daddy up, so we ran and hid in the living room. The man walked to our front door and started whispering something we couldn't understand and making scratching noises. All we could do is cry and remain paralyzed. We saw car lights approaching the house. It was my mother returning home from work. We watched as the man ran off the porch and hid behind my father's truck. We watched the man smile and wait till our mother got out of the car. She got out, opened the trunk, got her belongings, and walked up to the porch. I'm embarrassed to say, we were too scared to open the door and warn her. All we could do was watch as the man sneakily tiptoed behind her. She opened the front door and shut it behind her. She saw us hiding, and just as she was about to yell at us for being up so late, she saw our fear-stricken eyes glued to the glass on the front door. She turned around and saw his face pressed against the glass and him jiggling the doorknob. She screamed, put all her weight against the door, locked the door, and called my grandfather, who lived a street over. Then the man shouted profanities and how he was gonna rape her children in front of her. She called the police and told them as well. Next thing we know, my grandfather's speeding up the driveway with his gun out the window, just firing it randomly. The cops pulled up just as the man took off into the woods. They saw his back, but that was it. Other officers inspected the house and saw multiple scratch marks at our doors and side of the house. Apparently he tried to break in and couldn't, so he tried to lure us into letting him in. They never found out who it was, and that was the last we ever saw of him. We were all pretty traumatized for a while, but it didn't bother our dad one bit. In fact, he didn't wake up the entire time. Number 3. In grade 5, a friend of mine, Chloe, was messaged on MySpace by our mutual friend Asha. Asha asked Chloe to meet her at the park by Chloe's house. Chloe had baseball practice, so she told her maybe another day. Asha insisted that today was best, and she really wanted to hang out, even if it was for 10 minutes. Chloe told her no again, as she was about to eat dinner, then leave. Chloe thought it was strange that Asha was so persistent, as they never hung out at school, let alone afterwards. The next day, Chloe confronted Asha. "I'm sorry I couldn't hang out yesterday. I had baseball practice. I'm free tonight if you want." Asha was confused. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "On MySpace, you asked me to hang out last night." Asha then explained that she didn't message Chloe. Creepier yet, she had recently gotten a new account due to spam she was receiving. The scariest part to me is that Asha had referred to the park by its name, which isn't a very common one. A couple of years later, my friend saw a green van parked on the street the park was on, with a middle-aged man inside that only showed up during soccer games or when lots of kids were around, and would leave when the kids left. My friend lived across the street from the park and noticed this from her window frequently. Chloe deleted MySpace when she got home. Creepy pedophile MySpace man? I'm sure we can all agree. Let's not meet.